What are some of the biggest mistakes that new managers make in their first 30, 60, 90 days that have the potential to derail the success of their team or their project or their business? Well, I'm going to share a few of them and what you can do to stop them in this video. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of You're in Charge Now What? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and the goal of this channel is to help those of you that now find yourself in charge of a team, a project, a division, or even a business build the skills necessary to create and lead high-performing teams. Each episode, we're going to focus on just one topic. I'm going to share some tips and strategies that have helped me build my businesses in order that you can apply them and generate consistent results and grow your bottom line. Now, if you're new to the channel, I so would appreciate if you just go down in the bottom there and click the button and ring the bell, so to speak, so that you're notified as we put out new episodes every single week. That would mean a lot to me. Also, please put your comments down in below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and if there's topics you'd like me to discuss, or maybe there's an issue you need some help with, just throw it in the comments and I'll create a video, or one of my guests will find the right guest to answer your question. So let's dive into today's episode, which is about mistakes. Now, when a new manager takes over a new position, be it they're taking over a new team, they're hired to work on a specific project, or even running a business, everyone's intention is to be successful. No one's going into a new job, a new position, hoping that they fail. So if everyone's working really hard, and we have a video in our series here talking about what you should be doing in your first 30, 60, 90 days. But you might be thinking, well, Glenn, if everyone's intention is to be successful, everyone wants to go in and do a good job, what do you mean they're making mistakes that could derail the success of this team? Well, what happens is everyone wants to be successful. Everybody has a plan. But where mistakes start happening in these first 30, 60, 90 days, or even beyond, is when we as the leader want validation, want someone to tell us we're doing a very good job. As soon as we start pivoting and pulling ourselves away from the team or the project in order for someone to tell us how great we're doing, that's the beginning of all of these other little bumps and obstacles or problems are going to come that we'll talk about in a moment, but they're all based on this core fault, core problem of I want validation. One of the best pieces of advice I ever received was, I was an actor for a long time, and then also someone reminded me of it when I was a public speaker, which I still am. Once you hit the stage, it's not about you. It's about the audience. You have you're sharing something with the audience, be it a play, be it a speech, some content. The minute that your focus is on, I hope the audience likes me, I hope they really think I'm doing a good job, your brain is disconnected from your message. You're no longer focused 100% on the audience, on the team, on the project. You're focused on me. And that's where a little division starts to happen. And then what happens is this validation, you start making snap judgments, you start rushing results, you start changing things just for change's sake because you want this validation, you want this to happen. And so what you're really doing is only generating consistent results if the team is working in unification. But the problem is you start drifting off and it's all about you. And if all you're trying to do is get your supervisor to say, hey, great job, Glenn, my focus is what do I have to do to make them happy? It could still be the results you want. But if my focus is now split going, are you watching? Are you watching? Tell me you like me. Tell me what's going on. I start pulling myself away from the team as more important. And so I touched on a few of them, meaning that, some of these problems is one is rushing. We start rushing results. Results take time, especially if you're taking over a team that is not performing well. You have to do a lot of legwork. You have to really go in and inspect and see what was happening, what processes are in place. We've talked about it before, the 3 pillars of organizational structure. I need to go see, was there a process in place? Was the team not being trained? Was the team not being held accountable? I need to do that research to go in. I can't just go rush in and make changes for change's sake because I'm flexing my manager muscles and now I'm coming in. And I've seen that happen to the destruction of a team, meaning that's what caused it. I've seen managers come in and just say, well, the reason that I'm here, the reason why you hired me is because you couldn't do what it is, so you just be quiet and listen to me. And they just change everything. And that just is so disruptive for that team who's been there working. They're looking at you as a leader, hoping that you're going to come in and help them. Nobody wants to be on an unsuccessful team. But if you come in and just start making arbitrary changes without knowing why you're doing it, to prove to the supervisor that I'm a person of action, again, where is your focus? Your focus is not on the team and on the results and making sure we're going to be successful in the long term. It's please tell me how great I am. Now, the other thing is, because that wanting the reaction and because of this change for change's sake and rushing results, emotions get involved. Now all of a sudden I'm emotional, I'm impatient, I don't really have time to train. I start thinking in my mind, well, you should know how to do this. Why do I have to repeat myself? You're a professional, you're an adult, just get it done. And that's not either a great way to lead individuals, and that's definitely not a great way to have long-term results, because obviously something was wrong initially for you to come in, or even if it's a brand new project. If I don't have the right goal set, the time frame, if I haven't planned it out, if I haven't gathered my team around to know whose strengths, whose weaknesses, if I haven't checked to see how much bandwidth all of this team has, I just come in and I just say, this is what we're doing, here's the timeline, I don't really want your input, this is mine, I'm the leader, go do it. Again, it's that, please, I want the bosses to be able to say, I took charge of this. And they say, okay, well, great. And my focus is all about approval. My focus is not the team. So these are some things in that beginning stages of a manager. If your focus is completely on how good I'm doing, tell me how great I'm doing, I want my team to tell me how great I'm doing, they'll start telling you that just to get you out of the way. Right? If I tell you how great you are and now you'll leave me alone, I'll tell you how great you are all day. Now go leave me alone and let me do my job. The problem with this, as I said, now we're in emotions and we're disjointed from our team. Well, what happens in that then is this lack of patience. Remember our very first episode, we talked about what the most important skill for a leader is, and that's a coach's mentality. If you don't have a coach's mentality, if you don't have patience, if you're always changing things, think of a sports team. Think of your favorite sports team. If every week they changed plays, if the coach was just emotional and yelling and screaming and changing and having no patience, how is that going to be successful for a long season? People eventually are going to stop listening. We've heard about it when they talk about coaches who get fired, they've lost the locker room. Meaning that the team stops listening to them. The team will do what they have to do, go through the motions, but they're not going to do any more. They're going to do it because they're getting paid and they'll do their job. But they stop listening to you, they'll tell you what you want to hear, and all of a sudden you've lost your team, you've lost control of your project. Also because all you're trying to do is play to the wrong audience. Now, don't misunderstand me. That's not to say that you aren't being accountable to the person that you report to. Remember, you're on their team. You have a responsibility to that person to keep them informed and help them. But your job really is that team. And if you're just all about you, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. The most successful leaders are those people whose sole focus is the success of the whole team. They're part of the team. They think of themselves as part of the team, and together we're successful. Those are the best leaders. That does not mean that you are not holding someone accountable. That does not mean that you are going to suffer and have people on your team who are not going to do what you want them to do. But you as a coach have to have that patience, training them till there's a point where we can look at that individual and say, you're choosing not to do it. It's not about knowledge. It's not about knowing what you need to do day in and day out. You're choosing not to do this for some reason, and I can't have you on the team. But again, back to our problems here. Make sure when you're starting out, you follow what we talked about in those first 30 days. Make sure you're very clear on time frame and expectations from your supervisor. Communicate those down to your team. Work with your team. Get to know your team. Understand how they learn. Get to know what happened prior. Or again, as I said, if it's a brand new project, make sure you understand their bandwidth. What else are they working on? Because it might not be just your project. So you have to know what I can expect. Your job is to orchestrate everything, to communicate, to coach, to train, to inspect. That's your job as a leader. As I said, the people who make mistakes, meaning that they derail or are not successful, I always can track back. Always can track back to the fact that somewhere along the line, you started focusing on how great you're doing, or you started blaming the other people on your team versus taking responsibility. And all of a sudden the blame went, look at me, it's not them, it's not me, it's them, right? All of that happens. That's where you start having a breakdown on your team. They stop working hard for you. You will eventually lose control of the locker room, and eventually it's easier to replace you as an individual, as a leader, than replace a whole team. I know that's a little harsh, but I want you to get out on the right foot. I want you to have all the right information, understand that if your job as a leader, all these things we're talking about in the different videos, in one giant wrapper around it. We talked about that coach's mentality. A great coach focuses on team first, not the individual, not even about themselves. You're part of a team, you have roles to do, but the minute you start worrying about, is the boss going to like me? Does everybody like me? Your focus is now turned back on yourself, not the team, and eventually you're going to lose. So I hope you found that valuable. I really do. I think if you apply a lot of this and really keep that in your mindset, it'll help you through the tough times as well. As always, as I said, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Please share this out. There are a lot of people out there who I think can use this type of information to help them get better as a leader. And as always, please post your comments. I'd love to hear what you have to think. So again, I appreciate your attention, your watching, and as always, as we end every episode, you're in charge, but now you have a few more tools to help you become more successful. Thanks so much, and see you next time.